My name is Barbara Larrabbe. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for the Growth Solutions team. I really enjoy working with people who do not have a sales background. Perhaps they started their own business because there's something that they really love or enjoy doing, but now they have to put on their sales or marketing hat. Most people, I find, have some preconceived notions about what selling means. So do this little test yourself. Ask yourself, what is the first word that comes to mind when I think of salesperson? What I have experienced in groups that I've worked with is oftentimes we'll have people say things like snake oil or pushy, money-driven, slimy, some really negative connotations. Then there are a few members of that group that think, well, I think successful or helpers or problem solvers. The truth of the matter is you wake up every morning, and if you're not already slimy, snake oil salesman, pushy, why would you decide to put on that persona to engage someone about working with you and selling them your product or service? Those categories that have the negative connotation, I think of those as the sales hack. The helper, the problem solver, the tenacious, success-driven person that is in that other category, I consider those to be the sales professional. And every person has the opportunity to choose which one they want to be. Let's focus on how you can develop your career as a sales professional. Oftentimes, I find that there's a misconception that you have to have a certain personality type to be successful in selling, and I would disagree. I would say that there are people much more comfortable engaging and having conversations with folks, but that doesn't make them immediately successful in sales. Sales is less about a personality and more about an effective process. For your business, your product or service, you need to clearly define whatever your sales process is going to be. And there are a couple of things you want to consider. Who are my very best prospects? Who am I able to help? What is their demographic? What are the problems I'm solving for them? Where do they hang out? Where can I find them? Who else knows these people before I do? What's occurring in their business or their world or their life that would trigger a need for what you're selling? So let's use real estate, for example. Oftentimes I meet a realtor in a networking group and they say, I'm really trying to meet anybody who wants to buy, sell, or list their house. That's probably not completely true. If you focus on a target market, maybe your realtor exists in one county. They're talking to folks who live in another state. You may not even be able to do a transaction in that state, or you don't know the market well enough. So focus on where your favorite best clients are, who are the people you really enjoy working with, what comes naturally. Maybe you work with first-time home buyers and you really enjoy that, or seniors and you have the patience in helping them make that transition to their next home. Figure out who that is, clearly identify them, and if you focus on the quality of prospect, you will tend to find it in quantity. You want to be able to effectively qualify the people that you're going to be entering into your sales system. How do I pre-qualify my prospects? That's really important so that you know you're spending your time with the right people and making the best use of your time. The other thing you want to make sure you have is a really effective sales conversation. When I am working with clients and sales reps and they come back from a meeting and they tell me how it went, I'll say, how did that call go, or how did that meeting go? And they begin to tell me everything they said. I know it wasn't a good call. A good sales conversation is not about what you're saying as the salesperson. Sales 101, ask questions and listen. Sales 201, ask better questions and listen. And then sales 301 is ask open-ended questions and listen. We at the Growth Solutions team train our sales folks on a system called the READ process, which is a compilation of 6 types of questions that lead the prospect down a road and helps us identify clearly what they are hoping to fix, what their fears are about changing what they're doing and their bias around buying from us, what they consider to be a win. What does it look like if we're working together? We identify and ask enough questions so that after building a relationship and a personal relationship with this person, some really effective rapport building, we can establish the need and then deliver a tailored solution. So when asked the question, how do we close more business? Think about this. If we can find folks that need what we have to sell, if we can develop a relationship with them that they trust us enough to talk with us, answer our questions, if we can identify what's broken, what they want to fix, and how we can help them get it, and we can do it within the price range that they've established, the close is a natural progression of that conversation. In looking for or identifying your target customer, maybe you're just starting out and you're trying to determine who is the best prospect for you. Think about this. If you can't determine a very narrow prospect, maybe you can start off with a do not want list. And at least you'll begin to be more selective in the people that you're going to take meetings with. The only resource we can't replace is your time spent in your sales and marketing. So you want to make sure that you're spending your time with the right people. As a very effective strategy, make sure that you're talking with the person who can in fact make the decision to buy your product or service. Especially if it's an enterprise solution for a business and it's very expensive, you want to make sure the deciders or the decision makers are in the room when you're having that initial meeting. Typically, when the topic of sales training comes up, most people want to know, how do I close more sales? There is no silver bullet. Closing more sales and closing sales effectively is the result of having a really well thought out sales process and conversation. So start with the end in mind. Oftentimes people get into a conversation about benefits and features. So think about this. What you do for your clients, the meetings you hold on their behalf, or the product or service you're delivering them is the feature. The benefit they get out of it is going to be, oftentimes if it's consumer to consumer, some kind of an emotion. I feel more in control. I feel sexier. I feel powerful. I feel smarter because I've engaged with this client or this prospective product or service. If it's business to business, it's oftentimes profit driven. So if you're doing a B2B product or service, how do I save them time, money, get them more opportunity, introduction to more opportunity, all of it that would yield profit. Start with the end in mind, and let's start off with having the best for your business, the very best prospect and target market. So what's a sales funnel? A sales funnel is a visual representation of a sales process, and it's going to be unique to every organization. But generally speaking, if you think of a funnel with the wide end up top, your prospects go into the funnel. So out in the universe, you have immeasurable number of prospects. Suspects, I should say, a number of people in the world. Are all of them a qualified prospect for you? Absolutely not. So the ones that are begin to go through the top of your funnel. And think about how a funnel works. Once it's narrowed down and they've been pre-qualified and we know they can afford us and their timing is right, we're moving them through the funnel and they come out the other end as a customer. And oftentimes we have repeat customers, so putting them back in through the top. So when you imagine who's coming out the bottom of my funnel, that's when you begin to ask and identify for yourself who's your target market. And what are the behaviors of your best target market and prospect? We are big believers in developing strategic relationships with other companies that share the same target market. For example, an attorney and a chiropractic office may have an overlap in some of their clients. If the attorney helps folks that have been in an automobile accident and they're a personal injury patient, the chiropractor is also treating personal injury patients. So they may be referring cases back and forth to help with the best outcome for that patient. So they're not competing, they are both serving the same client and for different purposes. One is helping them heal and one is helping them get their medical expenses paid for and so forth. Think about who knows about my prospect before, during, or after me in the sale. So who's upline for me and who's downline? Who else is calling on them for the same purposes? Another example in the business to business arena might be someone who's doing payroll services. They're probably calling on the office manager or the business owner or the HR department. And then somebody who is doing health benefits, also calling on the HR departments depending on the size of the business. So they may team up, and sometimes companies offer both, but they may team up and co-market. I love it when clients do speaking engagements and they are cross-marketing to their existing clients, because this agent may be able to talk about life insurance and this attorney can talk about the estate, wills, and trusts you should have to protect your estate. So think about who are good strategic referral partners. You as a salesperson should build relationships with them. Following the same kind of conversation you might for a prospect, determine if there's a way that you can work together. Once you've had enough statistics that you've gathered in your selling process, your sales process will begin to form, and you'll be able to determine how many touches does it take for me to convert prospects just entering my sales funnel to becoming a client. We know that if we are doing valuable touches, in other words, we are able to deliver to those prospects valuable content, strategic introductions, answer questions. Timing of when they decide to hire us is critically important. So for us, it's about 6 to 8 touches, somebody cold to a client. I want to encourage you not to convince yourself that just because you text them or sent them an email that this counts as a touch. If you want to develop real relationships with people, it needs to be human interaction. So I strongly encourage the sales reps that we work with, if someone introduces you via email, it's great to respond, but set the tone via email. It's great to respond that way, but set the tone right away and the expectation that you'll be calling. It is so important that your voice is heard and you can begin to develop that rapport with that person. I've often asked the question, how often can I call my clients? How often can I call my prospects? You can call them as often as you physically can, as long as you're giving them something that they want. It is your job as a sales representative of your company to understand what your prospects want. You have to ask them. So if it's in the business to business world, I often ask them questions around how to get clients. Who are good introductions for you? What's critically important in the growth of your business right now? What are some areas you're struggling with? Who can I connect you with? I take notes when I'm meeting with clients and prospects, and I keep good records in my CRM so that I know who I can be introducing them to. If they want to meet a family law attorney, and I've got 3 or 4 of them in my network, I will start to determine, do you already have a connection with this person, and do you already know? And then I'll also be on the lookout when I'm in my networking mode, who else I can introduce them to. Make sure that you're doing calls as often as possible with valuable information and things that your clients want, and they'll take your calls. If it's a quick touch or whatever and you need to send them an email, that's fine, but don't delude yourself into thinking that that's really a good, valuable touch. It should be human interaction whenever possible. Take notes. You will be forgiven of all of the sales professional mistakes you're making, like maybe scratching your head or touching your face or being distracted. Take notes. There is a tendency when you're taking notes as someone is talking that they'll continue talking. It's almost like being a reporter, and it'll help you gather your thoughts and be able to repeat back to them what you heard, so that they can confirm, yes, this is important and that's a priority, and that would be second in terms of priority, and this is what I have in terms of my budget. So you can give them their words back to them from your notepad. Oftentimes I'll talk with people, or I'll be asked, how do I effectively network? We have a rule of thumb, and that is fish where the fish are. So networking can often appear as not working. So if you're uncertain about a group, try it out, test it, measure it, and see how it goes in terms of your sales function for your business. If I'm attending a networking event, I really ideally know a few things. I'm looking for small business owners typically. Usually those are daytime events. Not necessarily, not exclusively, but I tend to do more daytime events. I know I'm in a good event if I have to take notes on a person's business card. So if I meet them and I have to take notes, it's probably a high prospect environment for me, and I like that. If it's, beer and food, and if that's your thing and that's what you're there for, that's fine. It's a social event. Just realize it may be more social and not as productive. But don't delude yourself into thinking that just because you're busy, you're being productive. And that's in all aspects of your work life. So networking is no exception. Before you set a meeting, have a very clear purpose agreed upon for the meeting. So have a conversation with the person. Maybe you've been referred in, or maybe somebody said, oh, you should talk with Barbara, or you should talk with Dina. Have a clear understanding, have a conversation with that prospect to see if they are. So pre-qualify them and understand why they believe you should meet. It needs to be a good use of your time. So don't take a meeting unless you know what the outcome is supposed to be. So if somebody says to me, I heard that your company could possibly help me double our revenue next year. I know you've done that for so-and-so firm. Then I'll say, that's true. We can I ask you a few questions? And then I'll ask some pre-qualifying questions and determine if it makes sense for us to meet. And then when I meet, I'll have a sales conversation with them and take in more information to determine if in fact we can help them. Or maybe they're calling to say, hey, you call on attorneys, I call on attorneys, I want to see if we can get together and, co-market. Then I can make the determination if that's worth my time. So another mistake that I see often happen is that at the end of every touch with your prospect, have a clearly defined and scheduled next step. Your product or service may be a one-time close. It may be something that, we need office paper. Give us copy paper for our office and we'll take 5 reams. That's an easy thing. I'm the office manager. I can make that decision. If it's, hey, we need an enterprise-wide solution for our trucking industry, that's probably not going to happen the first or second time you meet them. So having an understanding of not just your sales system, but their expectations of how long this will take. Sometimes you need to, I like to use the term shepherd your prospect through your sales system. So explaining to them on your end, normally the next step we would take would be X. What do you perceive the next step to be? So having that kind of dialogue and teaching them how to move forward is really critical in a lot of your interim sales processes, especially with the things that we do at Growth Solutions team. It's talking with them in about a year-long or a 6-month engagement. So we'll tell them what the next steps would be, and then we'll agree upon when those things will be happening. At our company, we find folks that started a business because it was something they loved doing, they had a passion for it. And the reason they started their business usually has some reasons behind it, like, I want to make a lot of money. I want to build something great. I want to have unlimited time freedom. I want to help a lot of people. Some combination, some reordering of those 3-4 items. Most cases, they start their business and they experience success, and then they find themselves stuck. They are doing everything. They have no time freedom. They don't like their employees. They've hired all the wrong people and they've been family members, whatever you. What we do is we realize that instead of owning a business, they kind of own their job. We recommend that they get back in touch with the vision that they once had. What was their dream of starting their own business? And what is it that they envisioned? And we want them to write it down. Then, with the vision in mind, we help them create a plan that supports that vision. And it's not going to change overnight. People are really good at holding on to their habits that have worked for them. But we know that if we can help them make small adjustments daily, with that vision in mind, how do we turn the dial a little bit, hold them accountable to that plan, and help them put the systems in place and the right people on the team, and identify who they really are helping, and stop lying to themselves about where they're spending their time and what's working and what isn't. If we can help them hold accountable to that plan, and then what we see happen is that vision begins to become a reality. Repeat that process every 90 days. For people who step out of the day-to-day, create a plan, work the plan, we know that and are accountable to that plan, and do that consistently, we know that will change the trajectory of their business, their lives, and their whole team.